America is collapsing not slowly, but in real time. While you're watching this video, another bridge just failed, another veteran just took their own life, and another $1 million of interest just got slapped onto our debt of $38.5 trillion and growing every second. We've lost the plot. Cities look like war zones, families are extinct, and 63% of Americans can't survive a $500 emergency. This isn't politics. This is terminal decline. And if you're wondering why everything feels fake, why food tastes different, why people feel off, it's because you're waking up inside the fall of an empire. Rome collapsed just like this. And it didn't take long once the rot set in. The barbarians are already inside the gates, but we call it policy now. When Rome fell, it wasn't a single barbarian horde that brought her down. It was a slow-motion decay, a death by self-inflicted wounds, sold to the citizens as progress. And that's exactly what's happening to America right now. Back then, the Roman elite gave citizenship to anyone who could wield a sword or pay a bribe, diluting the very identity of what it meant to be Roman. Sound familiar? Because here in 2025, we're doing the exact same thing, but our version is outsourcing national loyalty to corporate interests and foreign capital. Half of our farmland is owned by investment firms and foreign entities. Bill Gates owns over 260,000 acres, and China owns nearly 400,000 acres as of the USDA's 2024 report. Why is nobody talking about that? Meanwhile, the dollar is being systematically dismantled from within, not just by inflation, but by sheer incompetence. You know, the Romans had a currency called the denarius? At its peak, it was solid silver. But by the time Rome collapsed, it was mostly worthless, just tin and lies. That's exactly what's happening to the US dollar. We've printed $12 trillion since 2020. You can't inject that kind of fake capital into a system without consequences. And now inflation isn't transitory. It's a new normal. Groceries are up 28% since 2021. But wages? Flat? Gas? Volatile. The middle class? Erased. In Rome, the plebs were pacified with bread and circuses. In America, we've replaced that with DoorDash and Netflix, but the formula's the same: distraction and dependency. We don't even need invading armies, we're doing it to ourselves. The real barbarians? They're not at the gates. They're in Congress, in corporate boardrooms, and in the think tanks, rewriting our future with a crayon dipped in delusion. Just like Rome, we're expanding the empire abroad while neglecting everything at home: bridges, schools, cities rotting like a forgotten apple. And history whispers the same thing every time. This doesn't end well. Bread and Circuses 2.0, digital control for a starving nation. The Roman Empire didn't collapse overnight, it decayed into theater. The Senate became a puppet show. The gladiator arenas kept the mobs entertained while inflation ate away their wages. Fast forward to America and look around. We're living in the reboot. Only this time, the bread is EBT and the circus is digital TikTok, YouTube, Netflix, dopamine on demand. But here's the kicker. 49 million Americans are now on food assistance programs. That's over 1 in 7 people. And nobody wants to talk about it. Our government is literally printing fake money just to keep people from rioting. And if you think that's sustainable, you've never read a history book. In Rome, emperors devalued their currency so badly they had to cap prices and force merchants to sell under penalty of death. We're not there yet, but have you noticed how price controls are creeping in again? California's capping rent hikes. The FTC is talking about regulating food pricing. It's the same cycle. Inflation, regulation, stagnation. And the circus? It's not just entertainment anymore. It's surveillance. It's control. Every click, every view, every scroll tracked. Rome gave the people chariot races. We give them filtered avatars and endless swipes to distract them from the fact that they can't afford to buy a home, can't get off antidepressants, and can't name a single person in government who tells the truth. And just like Rome, the empire is overextended. We've got 750 military bases in over 80 countries, but Flint, Michigan still doesn't have clean water. You think the rest of the world doesn't notice that? You think China and Russia aren't watching, calculating, waiting? Rome thought it was invincible too. But once the people lost faith in the institutions, it took just one spark and the whole thing came crashing down. We're already soaked in gasoline. A nation of debtors, distracted and disarmed. We are not a rich country. We are a rich government, sitting on top of a broke population. Let me repeat that because it matters. The United States government is rich in debt-fueled power. But the average American? They're one $500 emergency away from panic. According to the Fed's most recent report, 63% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck in 2025. That's not a statistic. That's a warning flare. Back in ancient Rome, the citizenry became so dependent on state handouts that entire generations forgot how to grow food, defend their homes, or function without the empire. Sound familiar? Ask a random 20-something how to cook a chicken from scratch or change a tire. They'll blink at you like you're speaking Latin. And let's talk about the debt. The average American household owes $104,215 in combined mortgages, car loans, and credit cards. National credit card debt hit $1.31 trillion this year, the highest in history. Meanwhile, the Fed keeps interest rates high to fight inflation. But all that's doing is squeezing working-class families to death. It's Roman taxation with a 21st century twist. Bleed the peasants until they break, then blame them for the collapse. Meanwhile, the rich, just like Roman elites, stash their assets overseas, buy land, and escape the fallout. And while Rome gave up its swords to barbarians, we gave up our independence to big banks, big pharma, and big tech. They don't need to conquer us with armies. They do it with algorithms, debt contracts, and endless terms of service we never read. This isn't conspiracy. This is collapse disguised as convenience. Just like Rome, we've become a nation of spectators, not participants. Everyone's too medicated, distracted, or in debt to revolt. But deep down, you feel it, that aching truth in your chest that something is very wrong. Because it is. We've traded freedom for comfort, and we're waking up to the bill. Infrastructure. Rot. Crumbling roads. Collapsing empires. You want to see the skeleton of a dying empire? Don't look at its military. Look at its roads, its water pipes, its bridges. In Rome's final century, the aqueducts that once brought fresh water from the mountains were clogged with silt and decay. Roads that once moved armies and grain became impassable. And here in America, we're on the exact same trajectory. Over 43,000 bridges in the U.S. are now rated in poor condition, according to the 2024 National Bridge Inventory Report. That's 1 in every 3 bridges in major cities that could collapse under stress. But instead of fixing that, what does Congress do? They throw billions at foreign wars, ESG programs, and social experiments. And we're supposed to smile and clap like good little citizens while our roads split open and our trains derail. Remember East Palestine, Ohio? That wasn't a fluke, it was a symptom. In 2023 alone, there were over 1,100 train derailments in the U.S., the highest number since the 1970s. Why? Because our infrastructure is being strip-mined for profit and patched together with duct tape. Meanwhile, China is building 26,000 miles of high-speed rail, entire vertical cities, and next-generation ports. We're struggling to keep the lights on in Texas when it freezes. And don't get me started on water. In Jackson, Mississippi, a capital city, the pipes are so old they burst in winter and run brown in the summer. People are literally told to boil their drinking water like it's the Middle Ages. This is Rome in its last century. The elite lived in marble villas while the poor got dysentery from the gutters. And here we are, cities full of luxury condos, while entire zip codes still have lead in the water. And yet, we're told we're the greatest nation on earth. No, we were. But you can't keep calling yourself a superpower if your airports look like bus terminals from 1972 and your potholes could swallow a Honda Civic. America has $2.6 trillion in deferred maintenance costs, and instead of fixing it, they're throwing another $100 billion at Ukraine. Rome fell when it stopped caring for its foundation. We are no different. We've just got Wi-Fi and better propaganda. The collapse of trust, when the people stop believing. Empires don't fall because they run out of money. They fall when they run out of trust. And right now, America is in free fall. Trust in every major institution is at historic lows, and the ruling class is too arrogant or too bought out to even care. In ancient Rome, once the people stopped believing in the Senate, the Republic was done. Political offices became playthings for oligarchs. Sound familiar? According to Gallup's 2025 survey, trust in Congress is at 7%. 7%. That's lower than used car salesmen, lower than the news, lower than any profession in America. And it gets worse. Trust in the media is at 13%. And for the presidency, it's barely clinging to 30%, even with a friendly press machine propping it up 24/7. You can't run a country when nobody believes the people in charge are telling the truth. And here's the terrifying part deep down, we all know they're lying. On everything. The economy, the wars, the border, the food, the healthcare system, it's all just layers of corporate spin and government gaslighting. Just like Rome. The emperors would promise grain shipments and public games while secretly selling state assets to their rich friends. Today, it's no different. Politicians promise clean energy while they own stock in Exxon. They talk about fighting inflation while signing trillion-dollar bills full of pork and payouts. It's not just corruption. It's institutional betrayal. And betrayal has a psychological cost. No wonder everyone's mentally fried. Depression, anxiety, and suicide rates are all surging, especially among young people. We don't just feel like we're living in a fake world, we are. Social media's a lie. The news is a lie. The economy is a hologram propped up by debt and denial. Rome fell because nobody believed in Rome anymore. It had a flag, an anthem, an army, but no soul. That's where we are now. Patriotism isn't about pride anymore. It's about survival. And when the population starts saying, "I don't care what happens to this country," that's the end. Not with a bang, but a shrug. The military empire. No one can afford. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, the military-industrial vampire that's sucking this country dry while calling it patriotism. Rome collapsed in large part because it spent itself into oblivion trying to control territory it could no longer manage. Its legions were stretched thin, propping up puppet kings and crushing rebellions in provinces that wanted out. Today, the U.S. has over 750 military bases in more than 80 countries, and we're still building more. For what? To protect democracy? Please. The Pentagon's budget in 2025 is a record $943 billion, and that doesn't even include the secret black budgets and intelligence spending. That's more than the next 10 nations combined, most of which are our allies. And yet, veterans sleep under bridges while defense contractors throw champagne parties. Same thing happened in Rome. The veterans of foreign wars came home to nothing, no pensions, no land, just debt and broken promises. And so they rioted. They became mercenaries. They became the invaders. The people they sent to die stopped fighting for Rome and started fighting against it. We are heading down the same road. 22 veterans a day take their own lives in this country. We cheer them at the airport, then ignore them at the VA. And still, we fund endless wars: Syria, Iraq, Yemen, Ukraine, Taiwan next. Each one spun as necessary, while American cities look like failed states. Homeless encampments in LA stretch for miles. Drug overdoses are now the leading cause of death for Americans under 50, not war, not cancer, not car crashes. Fentanyl killed 112,000 Americans last year. That's 2 Vietnam Wars in a year. But we're told the real threat is coming from overseas. Rome couldn't let go of its empire. America won't either. But here's the kicker. We're funding the war machine with borrowed money. Literally. We're paying defense contractors with debt from China while preparing to go to war with China. That's not a strategy. That's a suicide note. And just like Rome, the longer we hold on to this illusion of control, the harder the collapse is going to hit. Every dollar we spend abroad is a dollar we're not spending to save ourselves. And eventually, even empires run out of excuses. The currency collapse. Nobody wants to admit is already underway. This is where empires quietly die, not with riots or invasions, but with numbers on a screen losing meaning. Rome didn't collapse when the legions failed, it collapsed when its money did. The denarius was once trusted across the known world, just like the US dollar was after World War II. But Rome debased it slowly, shaving off silver content year after year until merchants stopped trusting it. Now look at America. Since 2008, the US dollar has lost over 35% of its purchasing power. And since 2020 alone, more than 25% of all dollars in existence were created out of thin air. That is historically unprecedented. There is no empire in history that survived that level of monetary dilution. None. And yet people still think inflation is temporary. It's not. It's structural. Interest on U.S. debt now exceeds $1 trillion per year, more than the entire military budget just a decade ago. Let that sink in. We are borrowing money just to pay interest on money we already borrowed. That's not economics, that's a death spiral. Rome did the same thing. When tax revenues collapsed, emperors printed more coins. When that failed, they seized assets. When that failed, they imposed price controls. Sound familiar? Rent caps, price gouging laws, emergency powers. It's the same playbook. Meanwhile, foreign governments are quietly dumping dollars and U.S. treasuries. Central banks bought record amounts of gold in the last 2 years, not because gold is shiny, but because they no longer trust fiat currencies. Even U.S. allies are hedging. Saudi Arabia is trading oil in yuan. BRICS nations are building settlement systems outside the dollar. This isn't speculation, it's happening in real time. The average American doesn't notice yet because collapse doesn't feel dramatic at first. It feels like groceries shrinking, insurance premiums exploding, savings accounts going nowhere, retirement quietly slipping out of reach. Rome's citizens didn't wake up one day and say, "The empire has fallen." They just woke up poorer, year after year, until nothing was left. That's where we are now. The dollar still works, but belief in it is eroding. And once trust in money dies, everything else follows. The final stage, a population that no longer believes in the future. This is the point of no return. This is where every empire meets its end, not when enemies attack, not when borders fail, but when the people stop believing tomorrow will be better than today. Rome reached this stage in the 4th and 5th centuries. Citizens stopped investing, stopped building, stopped caring. Birth rates collapsed. Civic duty vanished. The future became something to escape, not build. Now look at America. Young Americans overwhelmingly believe they will be worse off than their parents, the first generation in U.S. history to feel that way at scale. Homeownership is out of reach. Retirement is a fantasy. College is a debt trap. Healthcare is a liability. The system no longer promises progress, it promises survival. That psychological shift is fatal to a civilization. When people no longer believe effort leads to stability, they disengage, they withdraw, they numb themselves. That's why drug overdoses, antidepressant use, and suicide rates are exploding. That's why people feel exhausted even when nothing bad is happening. That's why everything feels hollow. Rome had the same symptoms. Mass apathy, corruption normalized, loyalty replaced with cynicism. People didn't revolt because they didn't believe revolt would change anything. And that's the most dangerous state of all. Because a society without hope doesn't need to be conquered, it collapses inward. You see it everywhere now. I don't care anymore. None of this matters. I'm just trying to get through the week. That's not laziness. That's despair. The ruling class still lives well, just like Roman elites did, but they are completely detached from the reality below them. They think control equals stability. Rome thought the same. But once the population stops believing in the future, no stimulus, no election, no technological miracle can reverse it. Empires don't fall because they are attacked, they fall because they rot. America is not special. It is not immune. We are following the oldest pattern in history with modern tools and better marketing. The difference is speed. Rome took centuries to fall. We've compressed the process into decades. And here's the hardest truth of all. Collapse doesn't mean everything disappears. It means life gets smaller, harder, meaner. Less opportunity, less trust, less freedom. And once that future becomes accepted, once people adapt to decline, the empire is already dead. It just hasn't stopped moving yet. So yeah, this is it. We're not watching a country anymore. We're watching the slow-motion funeral of an empire. And the craziest part? Most people still think everything's fine. But you feel it. You know something's wrong. Trust that instinct. Because what's coming next will make the last 5 years feel like the good old days. Stay alert, stay dangerous, and stop pretending this is normal.